Okay guys, here we are with another bear hunting questions answered. Got a lot of questions. I'm going to do a few of them this time, and I've got a few more, so as they keep coming in, I guess I'll probably do another one after this. And here in the next couple weeks I'm going to have an announcement I think you're going to be pretty excited about, where I'm actually going to be doing questions answered in person live, so you'll be able to ask questions and I'll answer them as I get them. So it's something that I've been working on for a while, so it should be pretty interesting for you. But let's dive right in here. First question is, how early can a guy scout for bear hunting and baiting spots? This is a question that I get quite a bit, and honestly I don't personally scout much for spots. And that might sound kind of odd, but I'm actually, you see, looking for bear sign. When you're talking about bear scouting, to me it sounds like you're out looking for tracks and scat and maybe turned over logs and rocks and things like that where the bear have been feeding. For me, to find baiting locations, I'm basically doing my scouting through online aerial photos and then going out in person, and I'm finding locations. So scouting to me isn't really a thing looking for bear sign. If I see bear sign, it validates that I'm in the right spot, but I don't have to see sign. So as far as scouting for bear hunting spots, once you've got a bait established and it's a good bait, you don't have to scout anymore. It's good year after year after year. When I first started baiting, I put out a lot of baits, and some were good and some were not so good, and I learned why the ones that were good, and then I just dropped the ones that weren't, and every year added more until I have a number of really, really good spots that are consistently good year after year. So scouting for deer and scouting for bear are really two completely different things. I hope that clarifies the issue of choosing baiting spots. And of course there are loads and loads of videos about bear hunting bait locations on this channel that you can watch. Here's a question that came up because of the really mild winter we had here up in the upper Midwest. We didn't have very much snow, and people were seeing bears out moving around in February and March, which is really unusual because normally we're below zero temperatures and lots of snow. Well, this year we actually had above freezing temperatures that time in February, and also very little snow. So people were seeing bears out, and I was having people call me and text me and saying, do I have to take my bird feeders in or whatever? So this question is, black bears, do they wake from hibernation? Is it dependent on weather or hunger or time of the year? And the answer to that is, it's dependent on the time of the year. And they are basically designed to hibernate from November until April in this climate where I live here and across Minnesota, Wisconsin, upper Michigan, and most of the mountain states and so forth. So you have to remember that these bears eat things that will plug up their digestive system, like twigs and leaves and stuff like that, and create a plug in their digestive system, so they will not eat until the end of hibernation. So even if they come out and walk around in February or March, which they've been doing this year somewhat, they're still not going to eat, and they need the green grass and clovers and those green things to get into their digestive system and push that plug out, and so they'll start digesting again. So even though they come out, they're not going to really eat anything until you start to see some green. This question says, I had two very large males that fed together multiple times at my bait site. Is this common? I assume they were siblings that couldn't shake the bond. And that's a really good question, because I have seen that from time to time too, and it's extremely rare. Could they be siblings? I suppose they could be, but realistically I don't think it's probably that. I think these probably are two bears that have just, they know each other, they're around each other a lot, and when food is scarce, sometimes bears are more amenable to sharing food with other bears. And To me, it sounds like this is the case where you got a couple males that are around each other a lot, and they have just basically accepted the presence of the other one at the bait. And sometimes that happens. It's really not common, but occasionally that does happen. So whether or not they're siblings, it's impossible to say. But I'll bet you got trail cameras of them fighting at the bait too, because typically they're not going to be just best buddies hanging out eating at the bait together. There's going to be some interaction. Why do some bears have a blonde streak down their back? Oh, this is a really cool phenomenon, and I have shot a bear myself that had a blonde streak. I've got friends that have shot bears that had blonde streaks down their back, and I got a theory on why this is, and I'm pretty sure it's accurate, and that is that these are all chocolate bears. They're all brown furred bears that have this blonde streak, and I believe what it is it's leftover guard hairs from the previous winter that got sun faded, and so rather than losing all their hair, they still have that streak of guard hairs from the previous year that goes down their back, and it lost its color just from being out in the weather, in the sun, and so forth, and that's why it turns lighter color, and they look like they have a blonde streak down their back. I've never seen this in any color other than a brown bear. So if you've got indications or evidence that it takes place in other colored bears, I'd like to see it. But at this point, I think my theory is accurate. Okay, I'm currently baiting in Wyoming, and I start getting the baits out on snowmobile in the high country. And in the past, I put out baits 2 weeks before hunting, but it runs out. This is a long post, so I'm just going to summarize. The bait's running out before he gets there to hunt. Wyoming, you can use barrels. I would take more barrels in there, and then whenever you can go back, all you got to do is open another barrel or two. With a snowmobile and a sled, you can get quite a few barrels in there, and so as you go back, all you got to do is open another barrel. Just get it. I mean, this is a situation sometimes you just can't. It can't be perfect. It's usually never perfect anyway. But in this case, the more baits you can get in there, and then as often as you can get back, the better off you're going to be. I know a lot of outfitters that do this where they'll take 6-8 barrels of bait into a site with a snowmobile, and then when the snow starts to melt, they'll go in there and open a barrel, and then they'll go in a week later and open another barrel, and so forth. And that's probably going to be your best bet if you're baiting up in the high country like that and you can't get back very often. He also says, I'm in an area where I'm not using processed bait, almost all meat. Well, that throws another monkey wrench into it, and I would say that unless these barrels are laying in the snow for the entire time, you're probably just going to have to get away from using the meat and go to something else. Maybe start with the meat while the barrels are in the snow, and then as the spring wears on and it warms up, you're going to have to switch over. Okay, next question. How bad is chocolate in bear bait? This is a great question, and it's something that we deal with all the time, and it's something that every bear baiter needs to be fully aware of. Chocolate has theobromine in it, which can be very hazardous to bears, and in some cases, some bears have actually died from eating too much chocolate. The theobromine poisoning has killed them. It's extremely rare. The most well-publicized case happened in New Hampshire probably 10 years ago, where there was a complete failure of natural foods, and the bears had literally nothing to eat, and there was a guy who was baiting with huge clumps of chocolate, and that's all he was baiting with, and the bears ate too much of it, and several of them died from theobromine poisoning. And so New Hampshire quickly just banned the use of chocolate, which I think was a terrible overreaction. I think we should educate people rather than just ban things in situations like that. And it was an extremely difficult situation to replicate. I mean, it's extremely rare. But it happened in that case. Well, not too long after that, then Michigan said, well, New Hampshire's banning chocolate. Guess we better ban chocolate too. And I had a conversation with the bear biologist in Michigan at that time. I expressed my concerns, and he just basically said, yeah, I agree, I understand with everything you're saying, but we're going to ban it anyway. And that was right during the comment period, so your comments didn't matter. Michigan went ahead and banned chocolate. He's no longer with the DNR now. But it creates somewhat of a hardship, because when you buy bait, you buy a barrel of trail mix, it could have a few M&Ms in it, which means that you're going to be illegal if you put that bait out. So just outright banning chocolate is a big mistake. But let's go into a little bit more about why chocolate can be a problem if you use too much of it. And if you've got a lot of chocolate in your bait, then bears could be eating too much chocolate that would make them sick, which at that point would mean they just quit coming back. And that's why it's so extremely rare for bears to die from it, because they have to get to the point where it's making them feel bad and then continue to eat to the point where it can kill them, which is almost never going to happen. It's a real overreaction to ban chocolate, but we also have to be careful as baiters that we're not putting too much chocolate in our bait. Keep in mind that the darker the chocolate is, the more theobromine it has. So milk chocolate doesn't have as much theobromine in it as, for example, like a dark baker's chocolate or some kind of dark chocolates, which has more theobromine. So keep that in mind. A few M&Ms in your trail mix is not going to matter. A few chocolate-covered raisins or peanuts and things like that, it's just really not going to matter. The bears are not in danger. But if you're putting out fairly large quantities of chocolate, then you have to keep in mind that some bears might eat too much of it, and you're going to lose them from your bait site because they're going to start getting sick. That's the issue with chocolate, so minimize the amount of chocolate that's in your bait. So that's today's questions, and keep them coming. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being a part of this channel. We'll see you on the next video.